Just setting up. Takes a quick second. And now we're live. Okay, welcome. Welcome to our viewers back to our podcast, Mind Your Health. Today, I am so honored to have someone I've been a fan of and have watched her content for so long, and to finally have her with me today. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Mina Merhome, board certified psychiatrist, and we talk about innovations in mental health and amazing kind of things that can really impact our day-to-day mental health. And today, I am honored to have Dr. Naidoo, who is a Harvard psychiatrist, a nutritional psychiatrist, and a best-selling author of an amazing book called This Is Your Brain on Food. Dr. Naidoo, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Mo. It's really lovely to talk with you. Thank you for that nice introduction.
Of course, and I love your background, by the way. It looks like we're ready to have some healthy food right now. We're like ready to go.
Well, you know, whenever I can hang around the kitchen or be around food, I'm usually pretty happy. So
I can see it. It makes sense. And it's a good segue into what we're talking about today. I was curious. I want the audience to kind of know, first, for you personally, what led you to get into this particular subject of the impact of food on our health?
You know, I think it's a bit of a long story because it really does, as I think you understand, always goes back to one's childhood. But, you know, when I think about it, just the way that I grew up in a very large South Asian family, around my mom is a physician herself, so she was in medical school during the daytime. And I skipped out of preschool to spend the time with my maternal grandmother, to whom my book is dedicated. But you know, Dr. Mo, from her, I sort of just learned how to pick fresh vegetables from the garden and watched her prepare food. And my grandfather and her taught me yoga and meditation. So I sort of came into the world with all of these tools that I didn't even realize were there, but were part of how I was raised. And in addition to that, there were also medical doctors, allopathic medical doctors, and a few Ayurvedic practitioners in the family, so that mind-body connection was part of the conversation. So I found that when I began to learn about mental health and the types of medications involved, I felt that in addition to those, because while they're life-saving, they also can have devastating side effects in some individuals. I felt there needed to be more tools in the toolkit to help people feel emotionally better, and that this mind-body connection should not be ignored, and that food was part of lifestyle. You know, I happen to love food and always wanted to be around it. So I started to ask questions, and a patient that I write about early on in my book really helped me unexpectedly have an aha moment about that connection. So I pursued it, and culinary school was really a pathway of passion. You know, just I love to be around food. I didn't expect it to become part of a niche in what I do, but I'm so grateful that it did. And I do feel that mental health is still stigmatized, even in this country. And so I feel like it's an easy conversation to have with people, you know, around food, but then also help understand how we can eat better for our mental health.
I love that so much. This sounds like it was really kind of an organic way, if you don't mind the pun.
Exactly. Absolutely. It was totally, sort of happened organically and without planning. You know, I feel fortunate that things happen in a way that I was able to pursue this. And I was always encouraged by my parents. I still don't know how they allowed me to skip out of preschool. So I always say I'm a preschool dropout. But I love to be around food and in the kitchen and hang around they wouldn't let me do anything, of course, I was too little, but always in that environment. And I think you really do absorb things from the environment. So it's really key in how kids grow up, right? So I feel fortunate that way.
And we're fortunate that you get to have that journey so you can share it with us. Because I think when you have that personal kind of experience, so this has been a part of your life, it really kind of translates to the listener and the reader, the person who's now watching, which I know for some people who are maybe just tuning in and they may not be familiar with nutritional psychiatry. It sounds kind of cool. Right. You know, food has an impact. Can you speak to a little bit about what is this field? Why should someone who doesn't really know about it really kind of pay attention?
Absolutely. So nutritional psychiatry is the use of healthy whole foods and nutrients to improve your mental well-being. And it really can apply to anyone. because it turns out that we are what we eat, that old cliche. And much of that is explained through the emerging and ongoing research around the gut microbiome, how the gut interacts with the brain, and how that actually explains the connection between what we eat and how we feel emotionally. So nutritional psychiatry is certainly an emerging and more nascent field. I've been interested in the intersection of food and the nutritional elements of food, as well as mental health, for a very long time in my life, and really was asking those questions early on in my career, and was fortunate that it came together. So for anyone listening, you can always start to impact how you're feeling emotionally by how you're eating. And starts off with some very basic principles or very basic pillars that I talk about in nutritional psychiatry. And what I share in my book is really ways that you can start to incorporate and add foods, because no one wants to feel deprived and feel like you have to eat less or give up something. I kind of don't like that model, and I'm very much against diet culture. I feel that tends to be what leads us astray in the US. Eat this, don't eat that, include this, give up that nutrient. And sometimes people are doing very sort of, they're eliminating foods that are actually healthy. So unless you have an allergy and intolerance or condition like celiac disease, you really should be trying to eat healthy whole foods. And so this journey, this way of eating, this use of nutritional psychiatry principles is really meant for anyone who wants to feel better. And I think COVID has really not helped that, obviously. Emotional health is something that we all need to be paying attention to. So that's really what it's about.
Yeah, and so you're not saying celery for everybody 24/7. That's not what.
No. It's not celery or medication or mindfulness or yoga for anyone. It's a combination. It's really a holistic, functional, and integrated approach to mental health, which some of my patients, I still prescribe medications. So some of my patients may need medications, but others may be able to embrace a holistic model that involves nutrition at the center of that by eating in a healthier way.
I love that approach because you're really speaking to sort of a practical approach here. Is that it's not going to be extreme. It's not going to be something that you do today and it seems not sustainable, right? Because that's one of the big
that's the whole thing. That's exactly it. It's not, for many people, it's not sustainable. I had a client recently who was working with me and who heard about a diet from a family member. And this diet involved some supplemental shakes and bars, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's always whatever the ingredients are in a particular protein bar, whatever. So always actually examine what it is. And it wasn't that he was doing anything wrong, but what this was essentially doing, this program he joined, was cutting his calories, right? And encouraging him to eat a healthy meal in the evening that included either seafood, chicken, because he does consume meat, and lots of vegetables, and cooked and prepared in a healthy way. So I'm thinking to myself, what the program part of it was doing was cutting his calories in about half,
right, and
asking him to eat one healthy meal a day. So he was still eating. He was eating little snacks, but every snack came in a little package, and he was doing okay on it. He was losing weight. But when you mentioned the word sustainable, my biggest concern, I was discussing this with a colleague at a case conference that we were sharing clinical information. And I just said, one of my biggest concerns is he's going to lose 15 pounds, but come February, he might gain it back because it's hard to sustain that, right? Whereas, so I think it's just finding the right path forward with some simple but important principles, which are now evidence-based. I think that's important for us to know.
Absolutely. And one of the quotes that I really love that you kind of open the book with is sort of just in the power of food and the impact that it can have from Hippocrates, the father of medicine, where he says, bad digestion is the root of all evil, and that sits in the bowels. And I thought those were really clever ways to kind of start thinking about how impactful this could really be. But even from way back when, the power in the bowel, so to speak, has been recognized.
Absolutely. Hippocrates, was onto something eons ago, right? And yet the microbiome research is only the last decade and a half to 2 decades. But it's really picked up speed. Between 2013 and 2017, there were about 12 or 13,000 articles published. So obviously it's gaining a lot of traction, and we're seeing the evidence clinically. The studies that have looked at a comparison of a probiotic supplement versus Prozac. Now, am I saying you should not take your medication? Absolutely not. I'm saying that food, nutrients, prebiotic foods, fermented foods, because probiotics are usually supplements, but fermented foods are easy. Every culture has a fermented food.
Right.
And so these are easy to incorporate into your diet. So these are simple principles, and increasing your fruit intake, your vegetable intake. With fruit and mental health, I'm cautious to always guide people around lower glycemic fruit like berries, blueberries being my favorite because of the antioxidant punch they give us and the anthocyanins, and also because individuals in the mental health who are struggling with mental health issues may have gained some weight. And so they want to be really careful about not just having a ton of pineapple or, fruit that are delicious, but at the same time are higher glycemic. So, but increasing the vegetables, that's an easy way to increase the fiber in your diet in a natural way. I understand that individuals with, different GI conditions may struggle a little bit with the fiber, but for the average person who's just thinking, how can I start to improve things? Adding in vegetables, beans, nuts, seeds, are all really great sources of fiber, which are great for the gut microbiome.
And to your point there, in terms of the, when we're comparing Prozac and probiotic, and how so many medications for those who are struggling with mental health can potentially lead to weight gain, right? So there is this ongoing struggle between balancing your weight, and you're going to continue to be in therapy, maybe take medicine. But let's say specifically, if we can talk about for a moment about depression. So many folks, especially since the past year and a half, have been incredibly difficult for everyone. For someone who's struggling with depression and is perhaps in therapy and is perhaps seeing a psychiatrist, what are some things they could be thinking about? And I'll tell you a little funny-ish kind of thing. As I was reading this chapter, and I was sipping on my Diet Coke, and I almost spit it out. I said, "Oh man, I'm already doing something I shouldn't be. This makes no sense from like a mood standpoint." I never thought that my Diet Coke could impact my mood. So can you speak a little bit about foods and depression in particular?
Absolutely. So let's actually start with what you just shared, because I think that what's important about the work that I do in nutritional psychiatry, it's not about demonizing any particular food, but if we can work on a continuum to start to clean up our diet, start to incorporate more healthy whole foods. I always say skip the store-bought orange juice because of all of the added sugar and the fiber stripped, but add in, eat the whole orange. Just enjoy that orange, and you're getting the fiber, the vitamins, nutrients. It's a similar principle. But cleaning up one's diet becomes important. And all I mean by that is look at any unhealthy habits you might have picked up during COVID. So maybe, being a busy doctor, I've been there and done that, it was either Diet Coke or some other diet soda on call, trying to kind of make sure you're keeping going, that you're having something you enjoy. But here's the thing, there are things like artificial sweeteners. For the most part, most of them, the traditional ones that we know about, actually are not great for our gut microbiome. There are some newer ones, there's great emerging evidence around them, but not the ones that we tend to find in, the diet sodas and things like that. Or if you're trying to go without sugar and you're going to sugar-free products, they might actually have some of the less healthy sweetness in them. But it's also sugar-sweetened beverages, because we might be drinking soda, we might be drinking juice. People love kombucha, and our kombucha is fermented, but there are versions which have a ton of added sugar to take away that tartness, right? And so beware of that type of thing. You might actually be thinking, I'm doing something really healthy. There's another one, fruited yogurt. So a half-cup yogurt can have, if it has blueberries, I just mentioned them, could have 8 teaspoons of sugar added, right?
Wow.
To that little small container that you buy. Rather get plain yogurt, whether you have dairy or not. You can even get coconut yogurt these days. You can get cashew yogurt, and just add in berries and cinnamon, a touch of honey, just to do that yourself. And you're having a much healthier swap right there. So cleaning up becomes important. Also, the list is, the fast foods, junk foods, processed, ultra-processed foods, and processed seed and vegetable oils, which tend to be pro-inflammatory. So just thinking about things like, what cooking oil am I using? What my go-tos are avocado oil or extra virgin olive oil. I definitely cook with clarified butter or ghee. And so, but not all the time. I use a balance of those. But and then if you want to add in foods, there's a ton of foods you can add in, right? You can add in those prebiotic foods I spoke about. Prebiotic foods nurture those gut microbes. They include things like beans, oats, bananas, berries, garlic, onions, leeks, so quite a few on that list. And then, adding in probiotic rich foods. So you can either supplement probiotic, but there are also foods that are fermented that I mentioned. And tempeh, miso, sauerkraut, kefir, kimchi, kombucha, all of those are great for you to start to incorporate if you're not eating them, including things like, those nuts and nut butters, avocados, olive oil. These are healthy fats that are good. And omega-3 fatty acids, you can get these in wild sockeye salmon, you can get them in sardines, you can get them in anchovies. And if you don't consume seafood like myself, you can get it in plant-based sources like chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, sea vegetables also have the short chain omega-3s. And then, you want to focus on spices. You want to add in some turmeric with a pinch of black pepper. A lot of good evidence in mood disorders. And foods, I go through the list in my book because I think it's helpful for people to know the actual foods to eat. But and other spices that I love to add in for mood are things like oregano. So, it's finding that balance of what you can do to improve symptoms. And saffron is also one, but the strengths of saffron, which is a delicate spice that is quite expensive, as you know, is that they used a much higher amount that we would use for food or in a culinary way. So that's one place where I think there's a place for supplementation with, good quality supplement. I know Dr. Daniel Amen and his clinics do a great supplement for saffron and mood, and I don't get any kickback from them. I'm just a fan of his work. Exactly, so I think that if you're looking, if you really feel you can't get beyond how you're feeling emotionally and you're looking for a saffron supplement for mood, that might be a good place to check it out. But besides all of that, all the foods that I just listed, you can start eating right now today. You might probably already be eating them, but just try to incorporate more of those in your diet.
I love that. I love how empowering this can be as well, because one of the feedback pieces that I've gotten from folks recently is, if we're struggling and we're trying to get in touch with a therapist or psychiatrist and we have to wait a couple of weeks or months until we can really connect with someone, what can I do right this very second? And I think all the things you're talking about really give someone a feeling of empowerment. Is there something I can do today, this afternoon? And if you pick up, your book, one of the things I love in the chapter 2 is, this little cheat sheets that you've got, right? Is that here are the things that you want to avoid, here are the things that you want to incorporate, and it's very, very practical.
It is very practical. It's intended. When I wrote the book and my editor and I were working in it, we were really thinking these are take-home lists, right? Because someone in a family, they have a friend, a coworker, whoever it might be, a child in the family, someone might need one chapter and someone else might need another chapter. But those are really intended to guide you and to make it easy to demystify this and make it easy. And it's supposed to be practical. It's not, the book is based on the scientific evidence, but I really aim to write it in a way that was understandable for people, that you could pick it up and get what you need on the book. So thank you for saying that, because a lot goes into it. So if someone's taking away the good points, that's really important too.
Oh, absolutely. It's been one of my favorite things that I've read. And to your point, how you mentioned in the book that hopefully not everybody has all of the conditions of the book, right? So if one chapter applies to you, I haven't met anybody that has everything too, but most people just get one or two. So one of the chapters that I thought was so compelling also is the anxiety chapter, because it's an anxious time as well, just kind of recently, and sometimes one of the things that you've kind of spoken about here, some patients have told me, I've been anxious, so one of the things I've done to sort of take the edge off is I'll have a few drinks at night, maybe every single night, maybe a few turned into 5, right? And can you speak a bit about, from the anxiety standpoint, the anxious gut here? Or some things maybe that we think could be helpful, maybe having a couple of drinks at night is super helpful for my anxiety. Maybe it's not.
Right.
Can you shed some light on the anxious part?
Sure, absolutely. Well, let's start with alcohol, because I'm hearing that a lot as well. I'm also hearing that people are having so much anxiety during the day, just with the work from home or hybrid situation, that they sometimes will, so you're right, at night, settle down with a glass of wine, but then during the day, calm themselves down at lunchtime because they're not in an office situation. So part of it is really helping people understand where they're at, because alcohol does a few different things. In moderation, it's perfectly fine. And is it perfectly fine? I shouldn't say that. It is. It's not perfectly fine, but it is how I would frame that is most people then not drink alcohol. So I'd rather offer them guidance around how to use it in a way that's safer for their body. So in moderation, and obviously, if your physician is asking you not to drink because of a medication or other condition, you should listen to them. But at the same time, I think people don't realize that alcohol drives anxiety, because it may calm you down initially, but eventually it starts to rebound. You need to have more and more of it as your body becomes tolerant to it. People have many withdrawal if they've had a lot of alcohol the night before. They can be super anxious, have a high pulse rate, almost a mini form of what we see in withdrawals. But also when they're leaning on a glass of wine to go to bed and go to sleep, it disrupts their sleep architecture. So things like that become important. But then it's not just alcohol. Coffee is actually a healthy substance, but in people with anxiety, they have to probably stick, the research says, to lower than about 400 milligrams a day, because if they don't, it tends to be the caffeine can build up and make them anxious. But at the same time, I always say pay attention to your body intelligence. So if you have even a half cup of coffee and you feel jittery, then it's not for you. Switch to green tea or a different type of tea that is completely caffeine free, or something else that could, my favorite is my golden latte, which is a version of golden milk with turmeric and a milk of your choice and spices. So it might be something that's not a tea or coffee. Then you want to, I think the message about anxiety is that fiber is your friend. High fiber foods, which include, again, vegetables and fruit, beans, nuts, seeds, healthy whole grains. These are foods which actually really help you when it comes to anxiety. They break down more slowly in the body. They keep you full. And by keeping you full and breaking down more slowly, they even out your blood sugar. And that way you're not having the spikes that you have when you eat a sugary donut, which is sort of a simple carbohydrate. Then adding in those fermented foods become important. The turmeric, again, add in that pinch of black pepper becomes important. Magnesium, potassium, and selenium. Selenium you get from Brazil nuts. Magnesium-rich foods include things like avocados. And then, some of the herbs that I often say to people, try out the teas. So lavender can be very calming, passion flower teas, as well as chamomile. So these are things that you can lean on in addition to the foods to help you feel better. With vitamin D, there's adding in vitamin D, just spending 10 minutes of outdoor time with the sunblock will help your vitamin D levels. But there's also, I was just looking at some work written by the a dermatological association looking at sunshine and encouraging people to use sunblock. And here's what I liked about what they said. They said, instead of worrying and getting into the argument of, am I getting my vitamin D when I wear my sunblock? Why don't you just eat the foods? There are certain foods that are rich in vitamin D, mushrooms, egg yolks, salmon, certain seafood. So you can get vitamin D in other ways. And I liked that because I think, I want to encourage people to wear their sunblock, but they get into that concern about it. So vitamin D is important. And I think some things, again, can worsen anxiety. Gluten is found to be one of those things, but it's not the same for everyone. It's highly personalized now. So some people may respond to slow elimination or elimination, say, a week of gluten and notice and improving their symptoms. Others, it may not be the case. So.
Yeah, and to your point there, because there's so much variety and it's personalized, I think it's important for folks to remember that you have that flexibility a little bit. And we're talking about options of foods, right? Not everyone should be kind of eating this and everyone should be avoiding that, but these are kind of helping guiding principles in terms of how to understand these foods differently. Because I think of the things that we're talking about, depression, anxiety, and so on, anxiety seems to be one of those things that there is such a clear, as you speak about in this chapter as well, physical gut symptoms, right? So often folks come in saying, I have these knots in my stomach, that
Mhm.
anxiety is just giving me these sort of butterflies. And oftentimes, if we're talking about some changes that we can make diet-wise, that can really make an impact.
That can make an impact. I think because these are such anxious times, people also should tap into other resources we have available within ourselves. Breathing exercises,
Mm-hmm.
pranayama and yoga. Or breathwork yoga was shown to reduce anxiety in a study that was published last May. While it also improved cardiac function, I thought it was fascinating that they looked at the psychological impact. When you get up in the morning and you say have that anxious gut or that knot in your stomach, do breathing exercises. Maybe you have a mindfulness exercise that you like to do. It doesn't have to be spiritually based. It can be if that's what you believe in and that's what appeals to you, but it doesn't have to be. A meditation, a yoga, a stretch, a walk outside, outdoor time. All of those can actually help sort of calm ourselves down and center ourselves. So I think I think the more that I talk about anxiety and stress, the more I realize, it's really a very holistic way of managing it. It's not just a pill, it's not just a benzodiazepine or anything else that you can prescribe. It's also other things. And in the moment, it may seem annoying to someone to say, "Oh, take a deep breath. Oh, do this." It's not that. It's the times when you are not having, say, that panic and extreme anxiety. Can you think through how are these additional ways that I can help myself feel better in addition to food? Food is a very huge kind of cornerstone of that, because if you're kind of surviving on junk foods, fast foods, processed, ultra processed foods, always say French fries at fast food restaurants have most of them have added sugar that you don't even taste because they're meant to be hyper palatable, so that you're always upsized, and when you upsize, you don't put it down. They're engineered to be that way. So these are when we say fast foods, and it's hard in our environment not to avoid these completely, but just having that awareness changes things. If you're someone who's running out for lunch every day and getting those types of foods, then just making that switch, cutting back on that could make a difference, because you will be consuming far less processed and ultra processed foods, and probably much less added sugar. And fast food restaurants also tend to use processed vegetables because they're less expensive. So, and these are pro-inflammatory. So.
Wow. I mean, I just want to underscore something that you said that's so powerful here that I want to make sure people don't miss is this sort of holistic approach, right? That it's not just a pill, it's not just one kind of therapy, it's not just one kind of food, right? I'm gonna go out today and have broccoli, and my day will be, everything will be better. But as you said, even whether it's spiritually minded things or meditation, that's that really having sort of a holistic lens or mindset. I think that's a message that we're really trying to, help folks understand through this podcast as well. And I wanted to, I can ask you 100 more questions, and I was actually prepared so much from the book for each chapter, but I want to be mindful of your time. And I wanted to just ask you kind of maybe in closing, as folks are seeing this, and hopefully this is enough if you're listening, if you're watching, you've already gotten the book halfway through this conversation because it's essential. One of the quotes that you put there to sort of kind of encapsulate all this is, the old idiom is kind of we are what we eat, but there is this idiom that you talk about as well, which is that for men and women, the food that enters our stomach can warm our hearts and change our brains, right? As some people say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, but I really love what you said there is that what can enter our stomach can warm our hearts and change our brains. In closing, can you just kind of leave us with your message there, what you were hoping for us to get from that quote and kind of from what we're talking about here today?
Thank you. So that's actually a great way to end, because I think it loops in the gut-brain connection, which is really where I got most excited about this work, and what I'm most excited about what the future holds in terms of things like psychobiotics and how can we actually find other solutions in mental health in addition to what we have and not excluding what we have. So, the gut-brain connection, the gut and brain originate from the exact same cells in the body. So when we are developing as embryos, these form from the same cells, and that is why they are connected. They live apart in the body, but they are connected, and then they are connected by the vagus nerve, which allows for this chemical messaging between these two organs all the time. And as I said earlier, the gut-brain connection explains the food-mood connection. Very loosely speaking, what I'm trying to say is that we are what we eat when we consume food. It is digested in the gastrointestinal tract. It interacts with the microbes, 39 odd trillion microbes that live there that are all microscopic, you cannot see them. And they're really there to help us. But amongst those microbes are also some bad guys. So when you feed the bad guys with sugar and all the stuff they mentioned is not great, they thrive. And when they thrive, they overcome the good microbes. And that's when you have the setup for inflammation. And you get, eventually it leads to things like leaky gut, other conditions, but also that's when I start to see an uptick of mental health symptoms. Now, take a step back for a second. When we eat healthy foods or start to make those healthy habit changes, like now today, eating, adding spices to your food, adding more vegetables. My favorite are still pure grain-rich vegetables, like cruciferous vegetables like cauliflower, broccoli, those. Great way to start. When you do that, you are taking care of your gut. And by taking care of your gut, the digested food, the products of the food you eat are positive products called short chain fatty acids. When they interact with the brain, they are good for us and they improve our mental health symptoms. This is very loosely speaking, and as you know in the book, I take a much deeper dive. But that's the principle of it. And that's what I mean by what we eat, warms the heart, but it also helps your brain. And if we can just take that away, the simplest healthy habit change that you make that is sustainable will help you in the longer term. And what I find, I remember, people start to feel better and then they want to do 9 other things. Right. The idea is not to give them a list of 10 to start with. It's overwhelming for any one of us. But if you can start with one thing, add a half a teaspoon of turmeric and a pinch of black pepper, which makes it more bioavailable to your brain and body, to a super smoothie or a tea, starting today. And if you don't cook with it, maybe you cook with it. And if you do, add it to whatever you cook.
I can't wait to go make a healthy dinner. Obviously, I just got my wife now. We're ready for a new start. So, Dr. I'm so grateful to you. And I know we have a couple of questions from folks, but in terms of affordability and some other questions about memory and ADHD, but I'll tell folks that the book goes into a lot of detail about memory, ADHD. There's just fantastic.
There are entire chapters on that. Yeah.
Yeah, entire chapters that really cover, it's just so well done. So the last question, if I may ask you, just how do folks connect with you if they have more questions, they want to learn more? What's the best way they can connect with you?
Absolutely. So subscribe to my newsletter on my website where you'll get updates about what I'm up to, what I'm writing, what I'm doing, and basically that shares updated research and information. My website is naidoo.com. Follow me on social, where I'm always putting out updated information, giving you all the recipes I mentioned on social media and in my book. And that's at DRUMANAIDOO. And I'm actually releasing the first course in nutritional psychiatry that will be in the fall of this year. So if people really want to take a deeper dive, join me in that. We'll be starting to share more information in the next month. So if you want to learn more, it's something that you might want to join me on.
Excellent. Sign me up. I'm there. So just once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate your time with us here. And I'm looking forward to continuing to learn more from you, and to our viewers, thank you for tuning in. And please make sure to follow Dr. Naidoo for all this amazing information that we've talked about here. So,
Thank you so much.